pre-graded framework is basically something that I came up with. I needed a procedure because I have ADHD, I'm very scattered, and I need like a set of rules to guide me through everything, pretty much. The P stands for prepare and prime. This is going to save you a shit ton of time when you go into lecture. So prepare and prime is basically, in psychology, there's something known as mental priming. Mental priming is basically when you expose yourself to everything beforehand so that the key terms and the key topics jump out at you. You tend to remember things more when you give it, or when you've seen it before and you give it special attention. So if you can go through the lecture slides beforehand, and you don't need to understand it, you just need to know that it exists. So this would be like the giant bold header, or the smaller headers, or the bolded words. If you know that they're even there, then when the professor says them in class, they're going to jump out at you, and you're going to recognize it. And then when the professor goes over the explanation, it's going to stick much better. This probably saves me like 2 hours of review per lecture just by going over it for like 15 minutes beforehand. So useful. And there's a bunch of different ways to do this, which I can go over later, but that's like the basic step. R stands for reading. Something that a ton of people overlook is that you can pretty much double your reading speed in about 30 minutes for good. So in terms of textbook readings or lecture readings or literally anything, I think the only thing I wouldn't use it for is reading for enjoyment, because like you don't really want to speed through that. Also not like fiction books. It's like there's no point. But yeah, you can like save hours of pre-readings and textbook readings just by increasing your reading speed. There's a few ways to do this. So the first one is if you're presented with any text, let's say this is like a chapter. This is like chapter 1. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to read the first sentence, because that usually tells you everything that's going on. And then you're going to read the last sentence, because that usually concludes everything. If this is a book and you're like, okay, I want to speed the whole book, we're just going to full send it, right? Just look at the back cover, because that's going to tell you, it's probably going to give you a character name. It's probably going to tell you the topic and the setting. That's a lot of the time, if you don't know the setting, that's really confusing because it switches and then you're like, where did this guy come from? So yeah, that's what you're going to, it's like basically a bigger version of this. If this is per chapter, just do it for the whole book first and then do it per chapter. In a whole book too, you'd want to read the first chapter and the last chapter. Kind of spoil it for yourself, but then everything in the middle will make a lot more sense. So in the middle here, this is where it gets a little complex, but you can do a lot more with literally zero more effort. So actually less effort. If you were to have, let's say this is word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4, and it goes like this. I'm going to show you a few ways that you can go through this. Each one is going to be faster, progressively faster as we go down. So if each one of these is a paragraph, your peripheral vision is incredibly strong, way better than you think. So a usual person, a normal person, would probably just read it one word at a time, correct? That's probably how you read it now. What you should try to do is just look at every other word, and your peripheral will take in these 2 words also. It takes a while to get used to it, but you don't even need to look. Like if I had a bunch, I'll just use this. If this is a full paragraph right here, when I was first starting, I would just draw a line like this down the page, and I would never look outside of this. You don't even need to. You just start here and you end here, and then you probably go, if this is 15 words, just go like every 3rd word, like 5 times. Like you're gonna look here, 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 and here. And you don't even need to look at, this is gonna be like 3 words here. You don't even need to look at that. Boom, already you cut off like 25% of your time. Then the next thing you're gonna do, so if you're here, this is a little bit more advanced after you've done it, but like after you've gotten used to this, you can start looking here. In between 4 words, so you'll take in all 4 of these at once, all 4 of these here, and the average number of words per line in a book I think is like 12 or 15, depends on the size of the book, but I think it's like 12 or 15. So this will be 5 looks or 4 looks per line. so that's already like a fourth of the looks. If each look is like, let's say a millisecond or something, I don't know, just random number, 10 milliseconds, right? That means that each line, if there's 16 words, is 16 milliseconds, and if you only look 4 times, all of a sudden it's only 40. So 25% is fast. After you do this, then, let's go down here, you're just gonna start looking here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, boom. Now you're down to 60 milliseconds instead of, let's see, this one would be 4 per line, so 3, 12, so it'll be 120, now you're down to 60. It's already another half, now you're down to 1/8. Then when you get really advanced, I have a video, or a 3 video series explaining all of this. So just bear with me here and then you can go watch that and it'll make a lot more sense. But after you've done this, you'll just start going boom, boom, diagonal. 2 looks, 20 milliseconds, whole page. The key thing here is to never go back. If you don't understand it, don't go back until you've gone through the whole page. And you might think that speed reading, you're like, oh, how do I actually take in everything? They'll probably just look at words, right? It doesn't make any sense. When you read, you actually can't not understand it. If I were to write a random word here, you would take it in no matter what. It's not really an option. So the way to make sure that you actually understand what's going on here is at the end of each paragraph when you're first starting, just ask yourself, what was that about? And if you don't know, use the context of here.
Sorry, it was per paragraph?
Sorry?
It was per paragraph, like after each paragraph?
Yeah, after each paragraph. Just when you're first starting out, and then afterwards just do it for like the whole page. Most pages will probably be like 3 paragraphs, and they'll be like longer. If it's an academic journal or something, it's probably going to be smaller, a lot of citations. Skip over the citations. Unless you do need them, in which case then use them, but otherwise just completely skip over it. And actually, academic journals are easier because they're going to state the hypothesis right at the beginning. And so if you just look at that and then go to the conclusion, you're like, okay, here's what I need to know, here's all the data. And then just like, if you need to draw things from the procedure, take the procedure. But yeah, that's going to save you a ton of time. So, go diagonally. If this is the whole page, eventually you're just going to go boom, 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 maybe start here. And then if there's like another line here, here. Now it's like 6 looks of the whole page. You're just going to go diagonally across the entire page. This takes a while to work out too, and I'm still dealing with this, but I think I went from like a page, like I have ADHD, so I sucked at reading. Like I hated reading, and I would just never do it, so I never practiced. And then I realized that you could speed read. So I went from an average page like this in about 1 minute and 30 seconds to about 20 seconds. So mental priming, you also go through whatever it is you're going to read, especially if it's for lecture. So if you need to read over a bunch of lecture slides and there's some big paragraphs on it, then you're going to want to go and like mentally prime yourself by knowing what it actually is that you're going to be reading about. And again, you'd read the topic, the first sentence, the last sentence, and then go through it all, speed read it, gun it. That way, anything you pick up here is going to make sense in the context of the structure that you already formed in your head mentally. Okay, the next one is engage in lecture. This one's tricky because people are very particular about the way they like to take notes. Usually, this is the way I do it, but you by no means have to follow this exactly. Tailor it to however you want. The prime, for me, that's just reading. I don't really usually make a mind map, but I might start doing that though. It's a good suggestion. And then for engaging in lecture, if you were to have, say, a slide, you have big text like this, and then you have little text like this. Your short-term memory is incredibly limited. It holds about 7 items. This is a lot more than 7 items, and that will not stick in my head, no matter how much I try to memorize it. If I try to write all of the explanations that the professor gives, it might be helpful when I'm looking back, but I'm still going to have to look back, and look back really hard, as in just like basically relearn it and reteach it to myself. So that's no good. We don't want to do that. That takes too much time. I want to sleep. So if you're approaching something like this, the way to categorize this, so there's something called chunking. And chunking basically puts a bunch of information into one chunk of information, and you only have to memorize that thing. So, for example, take a phone number, right? 1, 2, 3, let's say, okay, 1, 2, 3, dash 4, 5, 6, dash 7, 8, 9, 0. This is pretty easy to remember because it's split into 3. But if I got rid of this part, you would have, let's say they were random numbers and not in order. You would have a really hard time remembering that. 10 random numbers, it's pretty difficult to do. But if it's split up into chunks, it's much easier. So the idea here is to make this entire slide one chunk. And that way you're only trying to remember, it's anywhere from like 30 to 50 chunks instead of like a bajillion. So the way I categorize all of this is just to write down whatever the question is that this information would answer. Because when you're going into an exam, you're basically just answering questions. So to me, it doesn't make sense to study any other way than answering questions. If I know what the question is, then I know that I'm gonna have to remember this information. And if I don't know the explanation, I can always look it up. I don't really need the professor for that. I need the professor to tell me what it is that I need to know so that I can go figure it out myself. In high school, they kind of just tell you what it is and then they teach it to you too. They don't do that in university that much. If you have a really good professor, maybe. But like most of the time they'll just tell you what it is, they'll go over a practice problem and be like, now you should get it, and then send you on your way. Let's say this information was talking about the mitochondria, and then this here was like a bunch of bio stuff. The question would be like, what is the function of the mitochondria in the cell? Then all of this is one chunk. You know that this stuff answers what the mitochondria does in the cell. That's all you need to know. And then later you'll go over it and study it, but you don't need to like piece it all together again after the lecture. And this is why if you wait for like even like an hour after lecture, most of it just fades. Do you guys know what Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve is? Okay, I'll explain it. So it more has to do with the frequency of forgetting and how quickly you forget. But you guys know what spaced repetition is? Okay, so Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve, if this is time and this is stuff you remember, the first review that you do, let's say you go to lecture, is gonna look like this. This is how much you're gonna remember over time. Boom, pretty terrible. But then as soon as you review it, it's gonna look like this. And then the more you review it, the slower you're gonna forget until you basically forget nothing. So even if you wait like an hour to do a review, you're missing all of this time here, and you're doing fewer reviews. Because with this one, it's really easy to do a review. You just ask a question, and then you look at the slide, you're like, cool, that answers that. That's one review. Boom, first one, first notch, right here. And you just, it's very easy to just, if somebody, like if you're studying with people, you know, then you can just ask the question. They're like, okay, blah, 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 and then you explain like the whole slide. But then it will conceptually make sense. You're not just memorizing facts. After that is generate flashcards. This is the memory part. So I have a few rules. There's Simon's flashcard rules. 1, thou shalt not write by hand. The reason I say this, yes, you might remember it a little bit better, but it's so slow, and you can't do it in lecture. The second one, also like any boost in memory that you're going to get from this is going to be way overcompensated by the amount of repetitions you can do just because you have so many more, and each one only takes like a second. So when I do my flashcards, last year I made and memorized about 13,800, and each one took about 8 seconds to do. So, and I do about 50 new cards per day per class, so about 250 new cards per day, and then 400 to 500 reviews per day. And all of that takes about 2 hours. That's all I study for classes that are purely memorization based. Second rule is use Anki. By the way, Anki, does anybody not know what Anki is? Okay, Anki is a free software that you can get. It's free on Android phones. I think you have to pay for it on Apple phones. But yeah, it's free on all computers too. So if you want to use it on computers, it's completely free. It's basically the software that I use to make all my digital flashcards. And it has a spaced repetition algorithm built into it. So you just make the cards and you study them. You just do what it tells you to study, and it will basically make it so you're reviewing the stuff you don't know more and the stuff you do know less. So every time you get it right, you're going to see it less frequently, and then over time, if you get it wrong, it will restart. The third one is you're going to do 50 new cards per day for class. 50 to 40. It depends on the class. And I will go over this in another, I'm thinking of doing one of these like every week. So I will go over this in way more detail in another one. But because we don't have time, so I'm going to move fast. Okay, R is for review daily. A is for arrange visually. Your brain is much better at remembering pictures than words. There's a lot you can do with chunking information just in one picture. So if you create a vivid image of a bunch of information, then you're going to remember it a lot better. All you have to do is remember that image. So let's say for the mitochondria, I'm like, I want to know what it does in the cell. I'll just remember a car driving on the highway and exploding, and then the more senses you can include, the better. So what does it smell like? What does it sound like? What does it look like? How big was the explosion? That kind of thing. Then I know that the mitochondria is basically the engine of the car is the cell. So I remember that pretty easily. It's a very vivid image for me to remember. You can also make mind maps, and I can go much more into that. Yeah, if you're cramming, it's that's the way to go. Skip all that and just straight to that. Okay. Also, for arrange visually, you want to have all the flashcards first. You need all the nodes, and then you can connect the nodes with the mind map. D is to drill the content. This is different from review the flashcards, but essentially this is, you're going to redraw your mind map over and over again not until you get it right, but until you can't get it wrong. And I label can't get it wrong, can't get it wrong equals the 3 threes, which basically means you need to get it right 3 times in a row for 3 days in a row, and then after that you can review it once every 3rd day until the exam. If this is my procedure, feel free to iterate on it. If you get it wrong, start the whole thing over. Basically, that'll make it impossible to forget anything on the exam. And then E is to do exam prep. This is a huge section on its own, and I promise you guys all a freebie. The freebie that I'm giving you is the exact recipe that I use for exam prep. It's different than the 1 hour pre-exam protocol, and it's different from the exam strategy. This is exactly how I actually prepare for the exam, as in like the actual steps. This is like the general approach to studying in school. For now, that's where it's going to be. I also, if you don't know, I'm writing a book. It's called Make School Suck Less, and it will have all of that, all this chicken scratch in it, and the exam prep, but I'm not planning on launching it until September 1st of next year. So it's a long time to wait, and I want you guys to have some value. So yeah, that's it.